So thanks, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Paul Beyer. Welcome. This is the ChatGPT Nuggets Learning Lab. We used to call it a jam session. And we got, as usual, a lot of exciting things today. Let me walk through. This is being recorded, so folks should be aware of that. Let me walk through slides. So I've got a couple intro slides and announcements, the first 5 minutes, and then our showcase tonight is Elizabeth Planet, who's going to walk through how she's using a product called CustomGPT to actually build a chat box live that she'll be able to show you for her nonprofit that also uses some of her own data from her organization that she created. So there's a lot of interest in companies trying to get similar ChatGPT functions for themselves behind the firewall, not behind the firewall, sometimes with their own model, sometimes not. And this is one of many solutions that are coming onto the marketplace. What's nice about this one's practical and got implemented quickly. And then we'll do our standard case studies. The last few weeks, we've not done a lot of case studies because we had 2 showcases, so we should be able to have more this time. Just quickly, what is ChatGPT? It's an ever-evolving process, but we are right now doing a lot of advisory and education, really focused on practical issues, business cases. We're not focused on alignment or ethics or AI's taking over the world. Those are important topics, but not something we're working on. We're communities, half business, half technical. This learning lab has really become part of our kind of centerpiece. It's been a fabulous way for everyone to learn. It's been a fabulous way for people to meet each other. So there's been a lot of great connections from here. We do tonight's 7 o'clock, it's mostly for US audience. I also do one on 6 a.m. Wednesday morning at the East Coast time, which is 4:30 in India and 11:30 in London. So that's a smaller group, but it's reinforced to me every single week that this is a global phenomenon that's moving very quickly. I write a newsletter just to force myself to learn, and I'm always delighted when other people get value out of it. One person today was particularly enthusiastic about it, and I said, why? And he said, Paul, it's opinionated. It's not just a list of new AI tools. It makes me think, and it's actionable. So that's good guidance for me. We've got use cases. We do a lot of workshops. We like connecting people. People who haven't seen it, we really value case studies. We were the first firm to come and add, publish 15 case studies about ChatGPT, and really believe those are instrumental aspect of the learning cycle that we're all going through. We are finally getting our act together and putting the recordings of the learning labs up on our YouTube channel, which is also new. So if you haven't seen, I think we've got maybe the last 4 or 5, although we've been doing them since February. So we're going to try to go back and get them all. We did get a lot of reaction from the Jeffrey Hinton AI Will Kill Us snippets. 22,000 views, which was a lot of good discussion. So if you're interested in that, he's also got many other views out there, or many other recordings out there, but there's a good discussion going online for that. We have 2 networking events we're sponsoring. We just finished one in Boston last week. We have another one in Boston the 21st, and June 7th in New York City at Time Out Market, New York City. So these are free networking events. It's just really to connect the people. And the goal is to make sure that when 2 people are flying from LaGuardia or Logan to Silicon Valley and they both work in AI, that they aren't passing each other in the airports and not knowing. For folks, if you haven't seen it, we've got a ChatGPT for busy professionals. This is a paid 90-minute course tomorrow. Very excited about this. We're getting a lot of requests from people who just need to know and they're just busy. And yes, they could wade through 5 hours of YouTube, and they don't want to. They want just to have their questions answered, help them understand what's hype and not hype. And maybe we price this too low, but we really want to help with education right now. I'm not going to go through the basics, but people have not had the basics, please let me know. We've got a handful of training or training materials that are free. I think the important thing again and again is realize that it's trillions of words this is trained on, that it is guessing the next best word. It's like 1,000 interns at your fingertip that bring the clay very quickly to your table, but the last mile, the last element of the workflow process needs to be a human. So just as you wouldn't have an intern send off a report to your client or start coding something for you, but boy, they can get a lot of data, particularly when you ask them to get 3 or 4 versions of a press release or a particular model. One of the things that becomes so clear to us is the learning curve. Many of you have spoken to me in the past, actually 2 people today. It just takes a while to intellectually get up to speed on what this is. That's transformative. For folks who've been through the internet way back in 94, 95, just as I remember, Dan, I see you on here, we were at an open market. We'd have these big companies come in and we're like, all right, someone at home is going to see the bank balance. And the bank would be like, what? It just took a while. And a number of you said that one of the reasons you keep coming back each Monday, because it's a time-effective way to slowly get up this. We're doing a fair number of training courses for executives and different AI teams, and we're seeing the same thing, that people kind of unaware, kind of aware, kind of paying attention. It's a parlor trick. Oh, no, this is actually real. And so the key things we're seeing, that you speak the company language in a business process. And, you know, we're seeing a pretty consistent kind of learn, do, show. I can learn about it. I need to do it myself, and then I need to show coworker. That really helps start getting it into everyone's fingertips. So let's turn it over to Elizabeth. So Elizabeth and I have worked together in the past. I'm a huge fan. And Elizabeth, tell us about yourself and your project.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can hear it, yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, I noticed that Alden de Rosario is on this call. So if you have questions about CustomGPT, you should definitely ask him. So yeah, it's nice to meet everyone. I'm not a technical person. I'm a nonprofit person. I've worked at and run a number of nonprofit organizations. That's been most of my career. And a couple of years ago, I moved over into consulting and coaching and teaching. So that's what I do now, entirely focused on the nonprofit world, little tiny bit of work with mission-driven startups that are for-profit, but mostly the nonprofit world. And I have for a long time, you know, I use a whole sort of library of resources that I've built over the years for my own work and for my business, working with nonprofits. And I have wondered for a long time how to share that information with organizations. And, you know, the idea of like just kind of throwing everything up on a website and making it available to the world is not that appealing, because like, who's really going to read through all that stuff? And so when AI and ChatGPT and all of these new tools became available, I started playing around with them and thinking, you know, this would be a really great way to share information with people, to make my library available and have people be able to kind of interact with it. And so I started to try to build something. And as a non-technical person, you know, like got myself into trouble really quickly, like got in a loop, you know, that I couldn't get out of. So I started to look around for tools that would allow me to do that. And I found a couple, most of which were not that usable, not that they didn't sort of do everything I wanted them to do. And I found CustomGPT, which as I understand it, was built for people really to access their own materials, right? So you would have some archive of information. It might be you know, employee handbooks, it might be documents that you use in your work. And it would be a way to sort of have AI trained on that material, and then you would be able to interact with it. And so I decided to try to build this off of that tool, but have it be public facing. And it's free. And so basically what I started by doing is I uploaded all of my, not all, but a large number of PDFs, and started to sort of train have this tool train the AI on that information. And I started to use the tool and test it. What was interesting, I learned a lot by doing this, by the way. If there are any other noobs out there, just throwing something like this up is like such a great way to learn how to use it. So what I learned is that it was not enough information for the chatbot to like get smart. There were just so many holes in its knowledge that it was really hard for it to respond to something that wasn't like really specifically in the document. So then I picked about 5 or 6 of like the top really best websites of organizations that serve nonprofit organizations. So for those of you, you'll recognize these names: Bridgespan and BoardSource and SSIR and some of these kind of really, really high quality resources. And I put in their sitemaps. I added that. And all of a sudden the chat got much better. And as I've been using it, and I want to say, it's publicly available, but like hordes of people aren't using it yet. But people I know, my network is in there playing around in it. It's getting smart and it's getting better every day. And what I like about the tool and what was important to me is that for me in the work that, it's nonprofitama.com, nonprofit Ask Me Anything. What I like about, so what I don't like about ChatGPT is, and I use it and I enjoy using it, but what I don't like about it is that it creates a huge amount of work for me, right? So I put in a prompt, it spits out a response, and then because I'm all about sort of the reliability of information, the evidence base, I then have to go and do all of this research to confirm the information that it gave to me. And of course, what do I find? Like, it's a load of crap, right? So there's some really good stuff in there, and there's just like junk, and there's made up stuff, and it's not accurate, and I don't know its sources, right? Like, that's not publicly available. We don't know what these things were trained on. What I like about CustomGPT, and I think really its best feature, is that it will actually give you the source. So if you go to nonprofitama.com, you put in your prompt, you get a response, and I can give you some sample prompts of like what people in nonprofit world might ask it. And then it says, where did this answer come from? And you click it and it gives you the link. So it's either a link from one of these sitemaps that I put in, or it actually takes you directly to the PDF that I uploaded, and you can download that. And that to me is gold.
Elizabeth, excuse me for interrupting. You mind showing it? You want to walk through an example for the team?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I should share my screen?
Please, yeah. We can see it.
Great. Okay, so the whole thing doesn't fit. Let me see if I do this. Can you see the whole thing?
We can, yes.
Okay. So the beginning just explains that, and just to get on quickly on a soapbox here, like, I think the future of all of this stuff is not just these, like, just ChatGPT as it is. I really think the future of AI is in the curation and the expertise that goes into training these things. And I think in transparency, because creativity is fun, but it's, for a lot of people, for me, it's sort of intolerable. There's a little bit too much creativity. So anyway, so I kind of explained that what I did is I really put in these resources. Having said that, it is getting more creative, and it is starting to put together, like, I have warned people that it's really important to actually look at the linked sources and make sure that you understand what you got and that it is really representing the answer it gave you.
Elizabeth, we have one question on how did you get the PDFs in there? Is it you just go to a file and
Yeah,
upload?
so the way CustomGPT, and again, I'm like, I feel a little funny because the CEO, the creator of this tool, is actually on this call. So I hope he'll jump in if I get it wrong. But so the answer is, I don't know the magic that goes on behind the scenes, but it's an extremely easy to use tool. I'm hoping maybe I'll get like a discount or a couple of free months or something, because I'm just going to talk it up now. But it's a really, really great, easy to use tool. It has a menu, where you go in your settings. And
are you able to show that now?
Sorry?
Could you show that now, the menu?
Let me see. Yeah,
This is
let's
a very
see.
literal crowd. And while she's doing that, everyone keep your questions coming or hold on to them, and we'll open up the Q&A here in 5 minutes or so.
All right, so these are my project settings. Again, I hope Alden is okay with me showing this. I guess he'll.
Absolutely. You're doing a much
Send him,
better job than I ever could.
This is
Elizabeth,
great.
send him an
Can I
invoice
get
after
some
this.
free? I should get an invoice, or
Absolutely.
just like some free months. Yeah. Okay.
Just send me the invoice. Or
Okay. So there's a tab here for putting in your data, and you can either add a sitemap here, and then you can manage the sitemaps. So you see the ones that I've put in, Council of Nonprofit Organizations, those kinds of things. And then there's an upload area where you can drop in. I'm going to get another free month for this. You can put in anything. So I happen to have put in PDFs, but this Alden has built this tool where you can put in any format. And I think I saw an email that said you can put in videos and it'll transcribe them. I mean, it's really actually very impressive. So what I did was I put in PDFs, and if you go to manage files, you can see I have, tons of, let's see how many pages of files here. Oh, it doesn't do it that way. Anyway, tons and tons and tons of sources, that I use. And if somebody gets a response using one of these sources, it will give them the link and they can go right to it. Having said that, with the hundreds and hundreds of documents that I put in, as I mentioned before, it was not enough for the for the sort of universe of people asking kind of broad questions about nonprofit organizations. The sitemaps really are what kind of brought this thing to life. And the other thing I can show you, let me see, is so I actually think I way exceeded whatever I was supposed to put in here. I don't exactly know how that, as I said, I'm a non-technical person. So after this call, I'm hoping Alden will give me some kind of all access pass, because all these things say limited now. So I think I way over did what I was supposed to do. But what you can see is between the PDFs and the sitemaps, everything I put in, there's 196 pages of sources here. So if you compare it to ChatGPT, it's like a teeny tiny universe of information. So that's the negative of using something like nonprofit AMA. The trade-off here, the positive, is that you can rely on the responses it gives you because it's only pulling from this information. So for me, the trade-off is worth it. And once I get all my free stuff from Alden, I can put more stuff in it and it'll get even smarter.
Elizabeth, this is great. Do you mind doing a search or two that you would think would be common?
Yeah, so I threw a couple in because I didn't know how fast my computer would be.
Oh.
So I kind of pre-populated a little. So I put in, how do I start a new nonprofit organization? Not the best use of a tool like this, because you could just Google that. But again, it gave, a really nice little summary. And then it gave you, where did this answer come from? And so you can scroll through and, actually click any one of these and it just pulls the source right up. Then I did something that I think is a little bit more the kind of thing you might see. And I asked, is it better to start a new nonprofit organization or to use a fiscal sponsor? What are the pros and cons of each? So that's where it gets to be a little bit more creative. And then it gave me a really nice answer that is correct. Again, this is what I'm interested in. It's should people rely on this information? So it gave me pros and cons of starting a new nonprofit. And then it gave me pros and cons of using a fiscal sponsor. And then it gave me sources.
Have you seen it hallucinate?
And so here's what it looks like when you go to a PDF that I've uploaded. and it's, you can just take that now. Did you have a question, Paul?
Yeah, Elizabeth, have you seen it hallucinate or give wildly incorrect answers?
No. So the only thing it has done for me or for any of so I've been asking people for feedback. So obviously I don't know if it's done it for somebody else, but except for the people who've told me. There was one person who gave me a report of it wasn't that it was wildly inaccurate, and it wasn't that it was hallucinating. Not that I really know what that means, but I'll tell you what it did. Because I put the sitemaps in, which I really didn't want to do for this exact reason. Sometimes when you're in a sitemap and you're on a web page of a resource, it might be promoting another resource. So this person asked a question about DEI, this one of the sources that it pulled, and its response was correct. It gave a really nice response. It gave the sources, but one of the sources that it linked to was not at all about DEI, but at the bottom of that web page, it was like, if you like this article, you'll like this other article, which happens to be about DEI. And so it actually pulled that in. And I immediately SOS'd Paul Byer and was like, oh no, it did this thing. And Paul said something really helpful to me, which was like, so what? Right? Because so what? So you click through, you see that it isn't really the right resource. It happens to have a link to another resource that would be good. So like, who cares? So it gave me, I would say that's the one thing I've seen so far that I didn't like. But I think that's a small price to pay. And that's when I added this little thing that says, please take time to look at the linked sources.
Elizabeth, we got a couple questions come in. Do you know if it's, or maybe no, is it 3.5 or 4 that's using in the back under the covers?
It's only 4. We do not even support 3.5.
Okay, that's what I thought. And then another question.
Oh, I did something else that's really cool.
Yep.
And I'm not gonna be able to put it up on the screen because I won't be able to pull it up quickly enough. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm Elizabeth Planet on LinkedIn. I put up on there, I gave it a query, a prompt, and I ran it in Google Bard, ChatGPT, and my nonprofit AMA. And I showed people I put a little chart in and I showed it to people. What I did was I asked it to write, it was actually, I should have had that available for this, but go to LinkedIn, go to Elizabeth Planet on LinkedIn and you'll see it. I asked it to write a fundraising letter. And this actually is a thing that people like to use this kind of thing for in the nonprofit world. So I asked it to write a letter, asking for donations, and I put it into each of those 3. And I shared it on LinkedIn because this tool, Nonprofit AMA, did so much better. So what Google Bard did was it gave it was so high level, it was not that useful, which frankly is my feedback about Google Bard generally, right? It was kind of like the haiku of ChatGPT. It was short and not that, detailed and not that great. ChatGPT gave an extremely long letter, but it was so long and filled with so much crap that it was unusable. And Nonprofit AMA wrote a lovely little fundraising letter that kind of had all the elements. So I thought that was a really good example, and I encourage you to go look at that on my LinkedIn.
Right. Elizabeth, I posted your LinkedIn to the chat, so everyone take a look at that. So let's go to questions. So Bob, you got your hand? Bob, go ahead. And others raise your hand in Zoom. And Mike will
Yes,
go
Elizabeth, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Paul sent out your link last night, so I decided to play around with it a little bit. And kind of a couple questions. I don't know whether this is for yourself or Alden, but I had done a fair number of nonprofits, kind of a retired tech guy for a while there, and I searched for them and couldn't find them. So then I went to ChatGPT. Of course, it listed them as 501c3 and so forth. And I had known because our business school, Paul and I went to the same business school, they had to do a thorough review of the applicant in order to do so. So kind of a 2-part question. One is the lack of finding these nonprofits on your website due to the fact that it's not populated fully enough, in other words, the sources, or is it, and this might be a question for Alden, I don't know what you're doing there in the background, whether you're taking everything and vectorizing it and doing a full search. Is it possible that it has been ingested, but the model hasn't been fully trained yet?
I think this is mostly, certainly initially a question for me. It is not populated with that kind of information. So Alden's tool gets expensive quickly if you start to like want to put the universe in there. So I didn't set it up with that kind of data. I didn't set it up with like, it isn't like a fact finder. It's more like a sort of, the user I'm picturing is like, you know, somebody at a nonprofit who's like, you know, what I'm really picturing is the smaller nonprofit. So the ED or somebody like that who's wearing all the hats and has to be like an expert on a lot of different things. But what I did not set it up for is like, you know, specific data about specific facts. It's more about kind of like the universe of knowledge that ED might need to draw from. So I don't have that kind of thing in there. Like there's no like database of organizations in there.
And
Now
it
I
feels like Elizabeth,
could have it more comprehensive, but I would have to have like much more data in there.
and it feels like Elizabeth, if I'm hearing correctly, it's almost like Ask Elizabeth online.
Yeah,
it's
thank you. That's
information you trust.
yeah. It's the kind of questions that I get from my clients. Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
great.
And
go ahead.
looks like it's doing exactly as designed. The job of the tool is to answer from your content and only from your content.
That's great. Go ahead now, Mike. Or says Dan Slavin. Mike Melville, you're we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. This is for Alden. Alden, you created this specifically for nonprofits, this AI, correct?
No, I created it specifically for people who want ChatGPT with their data.
So who gave you the data?
Whoever is using my tool, insurance
Okay.
companies, doctors, lawyers, whoever, wherever the definition of business content and data is.
So you'll get a company that will pay you to create an AI using their data. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is what the tool does. It creates ChatGPT with your specific data. And it can be anything you want. It can be your website. It can be your resume and those little PDF files you have.
Mm-hmm.
It can be, I'm just debugging a problem. Somebody has uploaded their entire podcast library.
And then do you charge what's the business model? Do you charge the company that wants the specific data?
No, I charge the company for this service. So companies will create a bot, just like how you remember Google as a search engine.
Yep.
This is now a chat bot, and the chat bot is ingested with data. You send data to the chat bot, and then the chat bot responds based on that data.
And does the company supply you with the data, or do you go out and find the data yourself based on what the company needs?
The company supplies it, or they point us to the data if it is public data. For example, the way Elizabeth added those sitemaps, which by the way was a ninja move, right?
Mm-hmm.
She pointed the sitemaps, our system went, pulled all the public data from the sitemaps, and then her bot became that much smarter in answering the questions.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. That's
Sure. Good questions.
Elizabeth,
For what it's worth,
Yeah.
just because I'm such a like nonprofit nerd, this is not an advertisement for CustomGPT. Like Alden and I don't actually know each other. I just ask him questions, because like he's available on his website. But I just wanted to make something free. Like I have no commercial interest. I have no profit motive. I do link to my personal website here for people to like. I mean, I do like getting clients, but the tool itself that I built is free. And that's what I'm interested in. Is I would like to see people, in the nonprofit world, having access to good information without having to like pay me always, to consult. Do I think it'll like lead to new business for me? Sure, that would be great, but it is definitely different from probably most of the use cases, that CustomGPT is getting.
There's a few other questions online. One of it is how do you think about copyright? Are some of the data you uploaded copyright to other people or?
So everything, first of all, I'm not charging. So, everything that I've put up there is either under Creative Commons license or, is on one of these free websites. Now, having said that, there's like a big, gaping caveat here, which is that once you put up these site maps, I'm not a technical person. I have no idea what happens on the back end. Like if there's content in there in the site map that would otherwise not be available to the public, like does GPT-4 just magically make it available? Maybe it does.
No, it can't.
No idea.
Yeah. If it's not available to the public, it's not available to us.
Yeah, so everything is available to the public. There's another caveat. I probably shouldn't say this like on a recorded line, but it occurs to me that some of the PDFs, that I've collected over the years, like, did I have to log in to get access to some of them? Probably. So there are probably things in my library that like technically I've never paid for anything like that. That's not the universe, that I work in, but so none of them are things I bought, but I probably, quote unquote, bought them, some of them with my email address. And so a user who would use my tool might be sidestepping that. So that might be, I don't know if that's like an issue, but these are publicly available materials. And that you could otherwise just get off the internet. I'm just making the access to them easier.
You're curious, and also think fair use might cover some of this because it is a nonprofit. Are there other questions for Elizabeth? Before we wrap up and we'll go to open.
I do have a request for the group, which is, I just threw this thing up there. I've been playing with it. Like I said, I have my friends and colleagues playing with it, but I would really love it if you guys would either play with it or I'm sure you all know and love various nonprofit organizations in your lives. You may be on boards, you may have friends, who work at them. Encourage them to use it because I really, really want it to get smarter and I really want to get the feedback.
How should they give you feedback? What's the best? Is there a link on their website?
Yeah, so if you, here, I'll share again. So you go in, you ask it your question, you get your response. And then down here, I have a little questions, comments thing. And it gives you can rate the tool. You don't even have to give me your name, like nothing on this form is required. You could just put in a thing and be like, it sucks or it's great or, but what I'm hoping people will do, and of course, nobody's done this yet, but what I'm hoping they'll do, except that there was one person who did it, is that they'll actually write in like what their experience was and give me some feedback. I have gotten feedback on LinkedIn. That's primarily where I've been getting feedback. And then from friends who've just been telling me, what they think.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, the biggest feedback is the conversation history that you'll see very soon, because the users will give you feedback right there in the conversation, like, wow, this is awesome, thank you very much, or like, this sucks, and you're terrible, and all of that. And you'll be able to download it, pop it into ChatGPT and get that's a real goldmine of information.
Yeah, so I don't have access to that feature yet, but when I do, that'll be really, really amazing.
Exactly. That'll tell you what you're missing from your chatbot.
That's a very interesting use thing here. So as I'm in a chat, if I get emotionally frustrated, I just start, I'm not even looking for the comment thing. I'm just telling it right there.
Yeah. And I think I had covered a use case in the past where we put this up on our website and people were asking all sorts of questions. And after about less than 10 days, I was quickly able to see what questions were not being answered. And I was quickly able to put an FAQ section for all of those questions. So that reduced my customer service tickets because people were just like calling in again and again with the same questions that were missing. So that's a good example of like the bot telling you what you don't have, and other use cases as well.
There's a question online, and we'll go to Bob for Joe A. Did you have to train the bot with any of the data? Not sure. Joe A, are you still here with us?
Yeah. Hi, Paul. Thank you. I was just wondering when Elizabeth uploaded the PDF, did she have to write in certain context, or was there any, when she prompted it, were there any way she had to prompt it a certain way to get the information, or did she just ask outright, can you get this
So-
for me?
Yeah, so I'm going to give the non-technical answer, and then I'm sure Alden will give the technical answer. The non-technical answer is no, I just threw in the information. Now, what's interesting is, and that's been the learning process for me, is that the more you use it, somehow the smarter it gets. So I have all kinds of things in there. And when I started testing it and using it, there were times when it like couldn't quite figure out, a good answer to something. And then over time, it just has gotten smarter. I literally have no idea how that works, but I personally did no training. It's whatever happens, I guess, with GPT-4 on the back end, right?
That's great. We'll
Yeah.
go one last question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, my question's for Alden.
Uh-huh.
So Alden, sort of a technical guy and a non-technical guy, spending gazillions of hours as a result of Paul getting me interested in this stuff. So on the question is about the back end, what you're actually doing with the ingested data. In other words, are you really vectorizing it? And then kind of after that, these large language model has a gazillion hours of fine tuning, both supervised and unsupervised. So I'm guessing that Elizabeth is not doing that, or how does she make her model, her data better? Adjusting weights and all that kind of stuff.
No, so that's all taken care of by ChatGPT. So from our end, the first part is, passing and ingesting all the data and vectorizing it. That is the indexing part of the equation, right? After that, it's all about what context we pass to ChatGPT to answer the question. And how do we make sure that ChatGPT doesn't hallucinate? How do we reorder the context? How do we make sure that the relevancy and responses are good? All of that. I think you are a little concerned about like fine tuning and learning and all of that, which, these days the ChatGPT has got so good that you really, really don't have to do that much of fine tuning.
Well, I'm sort of referring, sorry, I'll just be quick here, to Elizabeth's comment early on where her data set wasn't really large. So there's a huge revelation when they went from 3.0 to 3.5, and that just kind of blew the doors open in terms of its utility. And I sort of related that to Elizabeth's comment early on. It wasn't until she went to these other site maps that all of a sudden it became useful for her. So that's where I think some of the fine tuning comes in.
That was so that wasn't fine tuning. It was Elizabeth adding and making her bot smarter, right? If her bot had a tiny piece of information before, she then magnified it by adding the sitemaps.
Okay, thank you.
Right? So it's almost, to use a doctor analogy, you first feed it 5 PDFs and then you give it a WebMD, right? So you can expect it to become a lot smarter after that.
Thank you.
Elizabeth, I wanted to thank you for sharing and thank you for jumping right in. It's really inspirational to see you
Truly.
jumping in and sharing. So thank you for jumping in.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth.
So let's take the last 5 or 10 minutes. We'll just open it up. This is the open mic. People want to share use cases they've done, piece of information they want. I'm very interested in people that have experience with all the improvements to BARD, if they think that's actually getting to change their finger habits away from ChatGPT. Who would like to share with the community?
Well, I actually just have a quick question for you, Paul. You shared a little video where I guess it was a plugin comparing BARD to ChatGPT.
Are you saying recently I did that?
Yeah, recently. I just saw it today.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. So what I did today was I'll just show you. Is the question is what did I show or?
Yeah, was it a plugin? I guess it's a question.
Oh no, what I did, I went. Can you see my screen?
We see your screen, yes.
Okay. So what I noticed in, and I'm using Chrome, and it might just be Chrome.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's not working on this one here, that the Bard and here we go. So here I put in Google search, and now it's showing what Bard. So here I asked, name the
You
top
can see.
attributes.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the Bard answer, and then if you click over here, you also get the ChatGPT answer.
Okay. Because I have the ChatGPT, but it's so funny, I don't have the Bard. I have to go double checking it.
Yeah, now I was adding to, and I went back and forth. So I went to my settings in Chrome, and I had originally made my search engine Bard. Took me a while,
Oh,
but then I had to go back because it was really messing up a bunch of stuff. So I'm actually, maybe I do have a plugin. I do have a Bard for a Google plugin. Maybe that's what's driving the comparison.
okay. That would make sense.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Did that answer your question, or at least confuse you a little more?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Who else wants to share or have a question? Lucinda, how was the conference last week? Any takeaways? And you had your jam session, right? Or your
Yeah. So I was so the conference last week, I went to several of the generative AI because I was focused on generative AI talks. So that was really good. There were some Microsoft ones that they talked about how they're doing it because they're a major sponsor of the Open Data Science Conference East, ODSC East. And then I decided to try and get some hands-on experience. So I joined the hackathon. And I just showed up and, in virtually, I showed up on the Slack channel and like, hey, anybody looking for a team? I found a couple of people and we put together a really interesting application, and we actually won second prize in the hackathon.
Wow.
So
was that your first hackathon you
it was
participated in?
my first hackathon, yeah. But I really researched up a lot of things like, what do you do in a hackathon and what's the etiquette of a hackathon?
How long was the beginning to end? How many hours?
So it was nominally 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. of that day, but you had to turn in the code by 3 and your presentation by 3:30. And but also, like, you could during the earlier parts of the week, one of the hackathon sponsors was a company called Weaviate, and they do the vectorizing that somebody was asking about before, I think Bob. So I just started playing around with that and trying to learn how to vectorize and using some of their code. And then I found there's another thing that they tend to pair with, which is called LangChain. And so you've probably read a little bit in generative AIs, large language models, that it's helpful, or you can chain certain things together. Like you can chain ChatGPT and a Google search and kind of get up-to-date information that you can then do large language models on. So it's kind of interesting. It kind of gets around the whole 2021 thing. It also vectorizes things, your data. So I'm assuming that it's all private, but you can take your own company data, vectorize it, and use that and kind of put it on top of the OpenAI GPT and LangChain. And then you can, put together the information in ways that you didn't before.
That's great. Someone else had a hand up. Thank you, Lucinda. Congrats. Jeff,
Yeah,
did I see your hand pop up?
Yeah. I don't know if anybody has talked about this yet, but the beta features for ChatGPT, the web browsing beta feature, have we talked about that?
We haven't. Have you got a chance to use it? I know there's certainly a lot of
so
talk.
I just seen that they got the use of it. I haven't tried to test it or anything yet. So, but that, I've seen a couple videos on YouTube, but so it's using the internet. So, it's using the current internet along with it. So I don't know if anybody else has seen that.
Has anyone else tried that code interpreter?
I've tried it. Yeah.
What'd you think, Anna?
I would say that like the information, that data source is kind of limited. Like they have the option to can include 5, 10, 30, or like as many data sources as they can, like kind of sort the data, but it usually gives not more than like 12. So basically, and it's not usually, I was asking for a data, for example, for the specific year, focusing on the privacy concerns and just to fetch the data on the news and policy updates over there. And it gave me like a bit of delusional information. Something was this year, something was like a totally different year. So it's it could be better. That's what I could say. But it's a good start if you like want to go look for something and have a good summary of it, like several data sources, for example. It's a good start to go, and then you can switch off this mode and then ask ChatGPT itself to kind of make any conclusions or write queries on this summarized data.
That's great. Thank you, Anna. Last call. Any other contributions? Well, thank you, everyone. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. Fabulous presentation. A lot of value. And thank you again for sharing. Good night, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.